And now, maybe, yes, you can see.
Yes, now I see the whole. Oh, there's a lot of people there. Okay, hi.
It's a 30 people from different fields of our Czech career guidance community, and also some specialists for educational strategies. And we would like to improve our curriculum in career education in the Czech Republic.
Fantastic.
So we are in discussion here. So if you have something about your experiences and your recommendations.
Very good. How shall we do this? Will you ask questions and I kind of...
Maybe you can introduce something, your work around this topic.
Okay.
Or your book, and then we can have some questions after 10 minutes or 5 minutes, some questions. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't know how many of you know who I am, but I'm Ronald Sultana from the University of Malta. Out here is very sunny. Please join me. I don't know over there, but I'm sure it's very nice. As you perhaps know, I have been involved in a lot of this Europe-wide research on career guidance, the kinds of policies and practices that have been developed. I've also been privileged to take part in, quite a lot of activities in the Arab world, so the Middle East and North Africa, which has been extremely exciting because one sees, a different reality. If I had to kind of summarize a lot of the learning that I have done by being exposed to so many different countries, I think there is a very, very strong message about career education. And that is, it is through the curriculum, especially in compulsory education, that we can reach young people and even younger children. That is, while there are many policies that state that career guidance is important, that it helps people orient themselves in life, perhaps develop a certain sense of purposefulness, and also the kinds of skills that in English they use the words career management skills. I don't particularly like that term, but the kinds of competencies that you need in order to increase your self-efficacy, to have a sense of direction, to know how to plan your life, to be aware of the obstacles due to gender stereotypes, due to your social class background, due to ethnicity, and so on. That all this kind of the kinds of competencies that are needed by youths and young adults, and also later on in life, to construct a meaningful pathway in a very troubled world, we must say, that this is very important, and that the best way to get these skills across is to have a curriculum that we can call career education. Now, what we have learned from across the different countries is that there are a number of models for this. There are models of career education where they try to embed aspects of career competencies and understanding, a critical understanding of the world of work through a range of subjects. As an example, one can learn how to sit for an interview, a job interview during, let's say, a drama lesson where one role plays. During the civics or social studies lessons, one learns a lot about trade unions, about workers' rights, about workers' responsibilities, about how the world of work works or doesn't work, why there is unemployment, and so on and so forth. In English, or in language lessons, in your case, obviously using the Czech language, young people can learn how to write their CV, for example. So in some countries, particularly because the curriculum is already overloaded with new subjects, with STEM subjects, particularly science, technology, mathematics, occupying a large part of the curriculum, what we call the political arithmetic or political economy of the curriculum. It's very difficult for governments, for the state, to introduce new subjects in an already overloaded curriculum. So what there is a tendency to do is to try to find spaces in the curriculum as it already exists in order to embed some of these career management skills, we want to call them that way. So that's one very important model. There are some countries that have done quite well in implementing that model. I'm thinking of Austria, for example. But it requires a set of skills and a certain institutional culture which you don't find everywhere. For example, I've just come back from Egypt, where they're trying to introduce career guidance and career education. And I am almost 100% sure that this embedding of career management skills in the curriculum will not work Egypt is huge, 100 million people. But what I know from the schools that I visited is that teachers do not really have a culture of working together. They do not have time, they do not have space in their daily lives to meet in order to design curricula. And this first model of embedding career education in the curriculum requires teachers to talk to each other, requires coordination between teachers of different subjects so that we know for sure that the different elements of career management skills are being covered. And I do not know enough about your country, but one has to examine whether there is this institutional culture in your schools for teachers to collaborate together. In Austria, they do this well because they have actually mapped the different career management skills across different subjects. They make sure that the teachers talk to each other and are trained. I'm just going in November to Salzburg actually to contribute to that training. That is, they actually take this very seriously, to my knowledge. And also, they have developed tools in order to make sure that students are not confused, because if all the messages about the world of work are coming from different angles, it is difficult for the students to bring this together. So they have developed a tool, we can call it, let's say, a diary or a journal, where all the learning about work is actually noted in this diary from across the different subjects. And then they have a career conversation with trained advisors in order to see what kind of sense they are making of the world of work and their relationship to the world of work. So that's one model. It's a powerful model. In my view, there are very few countries where this will take off, where this will happen, really well. The other model is a model which is a bit safer, depending on the institutional cultures in different countries. For example, in my country, Malta, this is the second model we have gone for, which is that in our curriculum, we have allocated a space, a timetabled space for career education. It is not only about career education. We call it personal, social, and career development. There are 5 pillars. I had developed this curriculum several years ago. It's now been revisited, reformed. But for example, so you have something about, relationships, something about management of finance, of your financials, so learning how to budget in your life. You have one about healthy living, which includes issues about substance abuse, drugs, being healthy and fit and doing exercise. Sometimes they introduce yoga. So there are these 5 different pillars, and one of these pillars is career learning. There's a lot of career development learning going on there. So that's what they do, and it's a special subject where we split the class in 2. So there's only maximum of 17 in each group, and people are exposed to experiential forms of learning. It's not a lecture or a lesson in the formal sense. It's much more based on discussion, on games, on experiential learning. So that's the second model, where you, instead of just embedding career learning across the different subjects, you actually have a subject called career learning. In some countries, they go even one step further. It's not part of life skills, but it is career learning as such. Those are the three main models that one can see across Europe, and certainly I've helped Palestine, for example, develop their curriculum, and they did it in a very interesting and intelligent way. That is, the curriculum was not developed by experts from abroad. I was there just as a resource person. It is the teachers themselves, in collaboration with students and parents, who actually developed in Arabic a meaningful curriculum about the world of work in a country which, as you know, is under siege. I mean, their economy is doing very poorly because of the political situation. And yet, they've developed a whole set of handbooks for the teachers, for the students, and for the parents, because in the context of Palestine, as in many other Middle Eastern and North African countries, parents are still extremely influential in the kind of directions that the students take. So if there is one big message that I would give on the basis of the studies that we have been involved in and my, peer learning by visiting other countries, it is basically that the most powerful model I see is when a country actually acknowledges that that students can benefit a great deal by having exposure to career education, and that this is timetabled. If everybody does it, there is a tendency that nobody does it, because there is so much to do at school that certain aspects of career learning are simply, disappear. So that's my little kind of spiel, my little overview as to what I have learned over the past years. I don't know if this is of any use to you, of any help. Probably you knew already a lot of this. And I'm very happy to answer any questions which are more specific, that include, for example, which are some of the best models that we have, or the most interesting models. I don't really believe in best practice, because practices really differ depending on context. What works very well in Australia, where they have a very strong curriculum there, will not necessarily work well in your country or in mine. The blueprint for the Canadian blueprint for life design, for example, is very good, but will it work in our country? So there isn't a best practice. We look at other countries and we try to inspire ourselves to develop our own, as Scotland has done recently.
Thank you very much. I have one question first. It's about what do you think about all these types? Like, you have a subject, you have also cross-curriculum aim for each teachers, and you have also something as cooperation with community and employers. So all these three types together, like mixed, if it's fair or not, I don't know.
Yes. So absolutely, what I've spoken about are, in a way, typologies, right? They are helpful to understand the possibilities. There's a third possibility which we haven't discussed, is that during key transition points, for example, when students are making choices as to which subjects they will study in more depth, or when they've come to a point where they have to transition to another institution, like a higher education setting, for example. In many countries, they have seminars, they invite employers, they invite ex-students, alumni, to speak about their experiences. And of course, these are good. On their own, I do not feel that that's a very powerful model, because they often come too late. Young people have already made their decisions, or have been greatly influenced by their colleagues, by their friends, by their peers, by their, external experiences, also in part-time work. It's something that is not often mentioned, how many young people actually work part-time, even when they're at school. We tend to forget that. My own PhD, for example, which I did in New Zealand many years ago, actually looked at the curriculum that they had in schools for work, and at the start of my research, I had not even recognized or realized that the strongest messages about the world of work were not coming from school. They were coming from the experiences young people had in after-school jobs, in weekend jobs, and in summer jobs. And they had developed a sense of who they are, a sense of their career identity, a sense of self-efficacy because of these experiences. And at the start of my thesis, I had not even factored that in. And it became one of the most important factors in my thesis, actually. So when we are talking about young people, we need to be sure that we do not operate with a deficit model, as if these young people do not already have a sense of who they are and what work means. We also have to be a bit careful, I think, as educators. If you are like me, from the age of 3 till now I'm 61, I know I don't look like it, but I'm 61, all right? I've always been in schools. Who the hell am I to talk about the world of work? I mean, what kind of experience? I've never worked in a factory, all right? So most of my life, it has been revolving around academia. So we have to be a bit careful not to assume that we are experts in the world of work, although I know a lot about the world of work from reading, but we are not really, I mean, compared to the knowledge that some of the kids we teach have about the world of work, from their own experiences, from their extended family and the experiences that they have. So we really, I mean, that's why I was very pleased with the approach adopted by the Palestinians, who developed a curriculum very much grounded in the experiences of the community. So in response to the question, a mix of the three models that we have discussed, that is embedded across different subjects, having a timetabled subject, so to speak, or curricular time devoted to career learning, and bringing in external people from the community, like employers, or if you can have a mix of the three, that's a very powerful model. What you do need, and this I would emphasize, and as I also argued in my handbook, which I believe you are translated or have translated already, there has to be at least one person at school who tries to bring all this information and knowledge together. Otherwise, it remains all over the place. That's why I've argued, for example, that schools ideally, in my view, should have a career learning hub. Some have argued that today, with social media, with the internet, these things can happen in cyberspace. But I think that career education still has to establish itself. And to do so, if there is a physical space within the school where people who are involved in promoting career learning and what I would call critical and authentic education about the world of work, then there has to be somebody who is trained. In my country, these are careers advisors. And in my country, all of them have to do a master's. We have insisted that the world of work has become so complex. There are so many issues related to quality of life, equity, opportunities, that you really need to develop a strong understanding, and at the master's level. That's what our kids deserved. So many countries are arguing the same. And you have somebody who brings all this together in terms of both the information, in terms of the career education, in terms of also career counseling. Sometimes young people require much more intensive attention, one-to-one or small groups, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. So any other question here? If you have. So we are starting seminar, so we have no discussion yet.
Yes, you haven't had your coffee yet. Yes.
But thank you very much, Ronald.
You are most welcome. I hope that was of some use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very nice.